So this is our learning center. It's what makes a plant. This is for grade 1. So for our learning center, we're going to need parts of plants, buckets for sorting, a large bucket with all of the materials in, a plant figure handout, scissors, glue, crayons, an Edpuzzle link, and then the book From Seeds to Plant, classroom plant books, seeds, and science notebooks. For our standards, we went with the next generation science standards. So we've got LS1A, which is structure and function. This is about organisms having external parts. So this relates really closely because it says plants also have different parts: roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and help them survive and grow. And that's what we're discussing in our center. The other standard that we have is LS2B, which is growth and development of organisms. And that's talking about parents and offspring. So this relates to the seeds and then the plants growing. For our objectives, we've got one that relates to each of our centers. So the first one is students will use the provided parts of a plant and sort them in the individual containers listed: seeds, stems, flowers, roots, leaves, petals. And we wanted them to do this correctly 90% of the time. Part of our group is it's with the teacher, so part of that one is discussing any of the ones that they got wrong and seeing their thinking behind it. Our objective number 2 is students will use the given materials: scissors, plants, the plant handout, crayons, and glue stick to create a plant figure. And then our next objective is they will complete the Edpuzzle with 80% accuracy.
I can read the next few. So the differentiation strategies to meet diverse learners. Throughout the center, students with disabilities will be provided with extra support. So that might be when the teachers will assist them when the students are cutting and gluing together their plant figure. Teachers will also assist these students when logging on to Edpuzzle, especially if this is their first time completing an Edpuzzle. They'll kind of guide them through that, guide them through each question. And the students with special needs or ELs will be expected to get a 70% on the Edpuzzle. Students will be allowed to draw pictures as opposed to writing sentences for the concluding activity in their science notebook. And then for the gifted students, they will be expected to receive a 90% on the Edpuzzle. Gifted students will also not be given labels for their plant figure activity. They will have to write them using their prior knowledge, sounding it out, or using resources in the classroom, such as books. And then we have a few safety concerns. A safety concern for this lesson would be allergies to plants. This safety concern could be addressed by using artificial plant parts as opposed to real plants. And then another safety concern would be students will also be reminded how to safely use scissors when completing the center of creating a plant figure. And then our management concerns, there will be 3 activities for students complete during the center, like 3 mini lessons in one big center. And one activity will be sorting of the different parts of a plant. Another activity will be creating a plant figure by cutting out and gluing together the different plant parts. And then the last activity will be an Edpuzzle that each student will complete either independently or with the teacher's help. And then students will work in small groups for the sorting activity. They'll be encouraged to help their peers and work together. And then the other 2 activities will be independently. So creating the plant figure and the Edpuzzle. But like we said, teachers will be monitoring students and answering questions as needed. The engagement part of this lesson, the teacher will explain to students that today they will continue to learn about the structure and function of plants and their parts. The teacher will demonstrate each activity for the students so they are aware of expectations. The teacher will show examples of the sorting again, just so they know like what they're expected to do. Oh no, what's going on? Okay. And then the teacher will then show the students an example of the end result of the plant figure activity, just so they know what like their plant figure should look like. And then lastly, the teacher will show the students how to log on to Edpuzzle And then the students will be split up into their assigned first activity, and if they're going to be into small groups, they will be split up into their groups. For exploration, students will explore the different parts of a plant. They will have to differentiate the different parts and put them into the labeled groups. Students will explore the different parts of a plant by creating a plant figure independently. They will be required to put the parts of a plant in the correct order to successfully make the plant figure. They will also have the opportunity to explore the different looks of a plant by using crayons to color their plant and making different designs on their plant if they would like. And then they will explore different functions and needs of a plant by completing the Edpuzzle. For explanation, students will be given more complex terms than in previous lessons from the Read Aloud From Seed to Plant by Gail Gibbons. After being presented with this read aloud, the students will engage in a plant part investigation to sort the parts. The students will be asked to explain why they believe certain items belong in each bucket, and will use new vocabulary words from the story to guide their explanations. Students will also be asked to address any items that are in the wrong bucket after the sorting exam, explaining and why they put them there and what they could do to fix it, maybe where it actually belongs. And then for elaboration, once students have completed each activity, they will be asked to share their plant figures with their classmates and their different designs that they used and created. Students will be split up into partners, and each student will have the opportunity to share their plant figure with one another. Students should talk about the different plants and how they knew where each part went. They will also be encouraged to discuss the colors they use when coloring and designing their plant. Evaluation. Students will be evaluated by the completion of the Edpuzzle. Like we said, students with special needs, ELs, will be required to receive a 70%, whereas gifted will be required to receive a 90%. And then students that are at grade level will be required to receive 80%. And at the end of the activity, students will write 2 to 3 sentences in their science notebook about what they did today. And they'll be encouraged to write about the different activities and what they learned. And like we mentioned, the EL students will have the opportunity or the choice to draw pictures instead of writing sentences.
So for the actual lesson part, all the centers, we're going to start as a whole group, and the teacher's going to pose the question, what makes a plant? The students will engage in a brief whole group discussion and brainstorm some answers to this question just verbally. The teacher will then use this time to present the 3 centers, go over directions, and show examples of what is expected, and then the students will be split into groups. So then center 1 is the plant figure activity. This focuses heavily on the elaborate. So students will get the materials, they will cut the plants apart, they will glue them in the correct order, and then they will label the parts by cutting and gluing the labels that are provided, except for the gifted students. That group will be making their own labels. And then after they're finished with that, they will make a creative name for their plant and put it on the top of their paper. Extra time can be used to color and add details to their plants. And then if there's still time, the students will explore classroom plant books. Center 2 is the Edpuzzle. This really looks at the evaluation part. The students will meet in the designated spot and log into Edpuzzle. Students will follow through the Edpuzzle. And then after the Edpuzzle, if there's extra time, they will be investigating seeds. So they'll be sorting the seeds by attribute and then recording in their science notebook. There's a designated page where they can list the attributes and then draw the pictures of what they see.
I'm just going to show the Edpuzzle. This is what it looks like, and as you can see, there's multiple follow-up questions throughout the Edpuzzle just to check for student understanding and student participation.
Okay, and then our last center is really focusing on explore and explain. So this is the teacher guided one, and this is the plant part sort. So students will meet at the teacher table. The teacher will first read the book Seed to Plant from Gail Gibbons, and this includes a lot of vocab. Students will be split into partners and given a tray of plant parts all mixed together, and then smaller buckets labeled with the plant parts. The teachers will work with the group to guide them as needed and engage them in discussion as they work through this. When the students are finished sorting, they will look at their parts with the teacher. The teacher will use this time to address any of the parts that are not in the right bucket or ask them questions to explain their thinking of why they put things in a certain bucket.
And then I have example buckets that we would use. So they're just these little buckets, and they would either be labeled depending on what group is working with them at the time. And then students would just put the plant parts in each bucket. And then we have like a few of them that they would have.
And then the evaluation, part of their evaluation would be through the Ed puzzle and getting the answers from that. The other part of their evaluation would be at the end, coming back together as a whole group, having a discussion about what we learned about plants in today's centers. And then to finish the lesson, the students will get their science journals out, and they'll be asked to write 2 to 3 sentences or draw pictures. For some people, that's an accommodation to demonstrate their learning of plant parts. And then at the very end here, we have our handout for the plant parts, and then following that is the labels.
And that is our center.